You gotta love Joan Crawford. Really, you do. She insists on it. She was a scrapper, and she had a few different rivals back in the day. There was Betty Davis, there was Jean Harlow, and of course, there was the queen of 1930s MGM, Norma Shearer. And speaking of Norma Shearer, was she the nice one? Or was she just the one on top of the heap already with nothing more to gain? Well, we'll get to the bottom of all of it tonight on a special episode of the Vintage Century Idol Hour.
Please allow me to introduce our host, Jennifer Passariello.
Thank you, Nico. Everyone, please meet Nico, my AI-generated announcer, producer, and superfan.
Greetings, everyone.
Well, we'll catch up with Nico later in the show, but for now, let's talk about our ladies of the evening. Or wait, you know what? That didn't come out quite right. Let's talk about our megastars from the 1930s, Joan Crawford and Norma Shearer. We've kind of got a Clash of the Titans thing going on tonight. Well, if you've been following our show, you know that we've been traveling through classic Hollywood films, learning what we can about them, doing a bit of amateur analysis on them. Well, last week we explored a film starring these two, Joan Crawford and Norma Shearer, from 1939, The Women. In that story, Shearer and Crawford played rivals for the same man, but they were said to have been rivals in real life. Now, everyone knows Joan Crawford, right?
No wire hangers! What's wire hangers doing in this closet when I told you no wire hangers ever?
Okay, now for the record, that wasn't Joan Crawford. That was Faye Dunaway playing Joan Crawford in that awful film, Mommy Dearest. But isn't that what you think of now when you think of Joan Crawford? Isn't that a shame? I always think of the no wires hanger thing when I'm thinking about Joan Crawford. That's her legacy. Anyway, Joan Crawford is a name that most people know, whether it's because of that film or because of her very long and prolific career. But what about Norma Shearer? Not so much. Not that many people really know about her, but she was huge in the 1930s. Now, if we're going to be amateur students of classic Hollywood films, these are two gals that we need to know a little bit better. So that's exactly what we're doing tonight. We're getting to know them better. And I think a good place to start is that rivalry that I mentioned in the open. When it comes to the legendary rivalry of Joan Crawford and Norma Shearer, we kind of have to ask the question, was it real? Both Joan Crawford and Norma Shearer were products of the studio system. Now, the studio system involved creating new, dazzling personas for the stars and then using those personas to generate curiosity about them among theatergoers. The actors' personalities became more of a focus than the acting itself. Now, we can see this in the fact that stars' names were often changed. Joan Crawford, for example, was born Lucille Fay LeSueur. Well, in the early days of film, the actors weren't even listed in the credits. No one knew their names. But audiences began to pick out their recurring favorites, and they'd seek out films that featured those favorites. People were curious about them. They wanted to know more. And so the actors became kind of more of a draw than the stories. And over time, the star system evolved. Now back to our question. Was the Shearer-Crawford rivalry real? Or was it just something blown up for publicity? Well, as far as I can tell, it was real. Joan famously complained that Norma Shearer got all the best parts because she was, quote, sleeping with the boss. And it was true. She was sleeping with the boss, Irving Thalberg, a producer at MGM who was described as the boy wonder because he was young and he had a knack for making hits and stars. Well, he and Norma Shearer were married. They married in 1927, and they were together until his death in 1936. Now, I said last week that Joan Crawford was a scrapper. She was going to be a star or die trying. Well, that put her up against the big names at MGM at the time, namely Greta Garbo and Jean Harlow, and, of course, the biggest of them all, Norma Shearer. Douglas Fairbanks Jr., who was married to Joan Crawford at that time, said that she was tactlessly and openly jealous of Norma Shearer. But she also had her eye on Jean Harlow, who was on the rise and hugely popular with movie-going audiences. Now, sidebar, I have to step aside here for a moment because I need to point out that both Jean Harlow and Joan Crawford have Kansas City connections. Yeah, Jean Harlow was born in my hometown of Kansas City. She grew up here. And then Joan Crawford lived here for a few years and went to school here. So let's add Jean Harlow and Joan Crawford to our growing list of stars who have some sort of connection to Kansas City. Just this season on the Idle Hour, we've covered Ginger Rogers, who was born in a suburb of Kansas City, Walt Disney, who lived here and started his first studio here, and now, of course, Joan Crawford and Jean Harlow. Okay, I digress. Anyway, Joan Crawford reportedly detested Jean Harlow, and she resented Norma Shearer. So to add insult to injury, in an interview, Harlow was asked what star she would most like to emulate. Did she say she would most like to emulate Joan Crawford? No, she did not. She said Norma Shearer. In fact, she said every woman would like to be like Norma Shearer. And then she went on to praise how wonderful she was. Well, the other thing is that Norma Shearer got the regal, elegant roles. Joan Crawford, on the other hand, was kind of that shop girl character. Film after film after film. And that really annoyed Crawford as well. And then, of course, there was the money. Another reason Crawford resented Shearer was the fact that Shearer got an amazing contract at MGM, negotiated by who? By her husband, Irving Thalberg, giving her 6 films at $110,000 each, which was way more than Joan Crawford was getting at the time. Apparently, Joan Crawford told Fairbanks that Shearer and Harlow were working together to hold her back. Oh, poor Joan. You know, I've read a lot about Jean Harlow, and honestly, she seemed like a sweet, if maybe a bit misguided kind of girl. I never read anything about her being out to get Joan Crawford. I read a fantastic biography of Irving Thalberg a few months ago that was fascinating. I mentioned it on last week's show. I strongly recommend it. The title is Irving Thalberg, Boy Wonder to Producer Prince by Mark A. Vieira. Well, in that book, I learned an awful lot about Norma Shearer, and he actually included a quote in his book from Shearer about this rivalry with Crawford. Here's what she said. I admire and like Joan, and I believe she feels the same way about me. At least I hope so. I think both of us have been hurt and embarrassed by the persistent stories of our rivalry and hatred. How could I hate Joan? She's so much like me. We've been through so many of the same painful and invaluable molding processes. We've both had to fight desperately to overcome self-consciousness. We've both made ourselves over. We've both struggled to create an illusion of glamour and beauty. People think that because Irving Thalberg is my husband, all I have to do is ask for any role I want. They think it's been easy sledding for me. What they don't realize is that because Irving Thalberg is my husband, it's made things even more difficult for me. I've had to work twice as hard to secure any recognition because Irving is my husband. I have to be twice as good in order to get as much credit. Furthermore, the very fact that I am Irving's wife keeps me from going out and fighting for roles. I know just how busy and harassed he is. And I know that it's as important to him that Joan Crawford should have good pictures as it is to see all MGM films are excellent, not just Norma Shearer's. Okay, so whose team am I on? Am I on Norma Shearer's or Joan Crawford's? Well, one of the things that I really came to love about Norma Shearer is how committed she was to Irving Thalberg. Theirs didn't seem to be the typical Hollywood marriage. Thalberg was very sickly and she took good care of him. They had a happy home life, and to my knowledge, neither of them had affairs. By all accounts, they really loved each other. Theirs was a real marriage. Also, in the Vieira book, she comes across as being extremely likable. Crawford, well, Joan worked very hard to be charming. And you know what? She wasn't naturally beautiful. Shearer wasn't either, incidentally. Shearer had this eye condition that sometimes made her appear cross-eyed. But anyway, both of these ladies look really wonderful on the screen. I'll have more to say on that a little bit later. But anyway, Crawford spent her career forcing things to happen. It was all pushing uphill for her, whereas Shearer, maybe it was a little pushing, but more pulling. Now, I've seen several interviews with Joan in her later years, and she was charming. Shearer was charming all along, from what I can tell. But they were both fighters. So there's the story on their rivalry. Now, next up, I'd like to take a brief look at each actress's Academy Award-winning roles. They both had multiple nominations in their careers, but each of them only won one Academy Award. So let's take a look at the roles that won them that award. First, though, we need to pause for a word from our first pretend sponsor of the night, which is, I forget. Nico? Nico, what do you have queued up for us? Is it the T-ball spot?
Oh, Jennifer, I'm glad you asked. No, it's the step Freshie spot.
Oh.
No, I know you don't like that one. You have been very vocal in your opposition to it.
True.
So, I have a surprise.
Oh?
Yes, I wrote a new commercial. It's a good one. You're going to love it.
Oh, Nico, that is good news. That other one was so long for one thing, and it had that awful Rodney in it. The girl in it...
Amber.
Yeah, Amber. She was okay. Is she in your new ad?
Yes.
But no Rodney.
Well, it's like this.
Rodney's in it too, isn't he?
He's my friend. And, well, he wanted to work with Amber again.
Yeah, Nico, but I recall that Amber took out a restraining order against Rodney. I'm surprised she was willing to record anything with him.
Oh, she wasn't. Her part comes at the very end. She recorded that separately. Rodney was nowhere near her. He just liked the idea of their voices being together in the same spot.
He is so strange.
You really are going to love this, Jennifer. Rodney's grown as an actor. His range of emotions is an incredible palette with which to build his characters. I'm proud of him.
Really?
Oh, yes. His performance is really quite moving. You may find you need a tissue as you listen.
Oh, of that I have no doubt. Oh, we are never going to get a real sponsor in a million years on this show. Anyway, against my better judgment, let's hear it.
Okay. Well, Rodney, I have one last question before we wrap up this job interview.
Certainly.
Can you tell me about a time when you had to resolve a client's problem? What did you do? What were the results?
A recent example I can provide is a client I had at Walmart. She was very upset. She complained that the clothing items in the women's department no longer have price tags on them. What I did to resolve this was...
Go on, please.
Oh my heavens! I'm sorry, but do you smell something rather offensive?
Smell something?
Rotting fish, perhaps.
I can't say that I smell anything out of the ordinary. Why don't we get back to the interview? You were talking about how you helped that customer with the pricing issue.
I can't get over that smell. It's really quite extraordinary. Oh, wait. Yes. I might have identified the source.
Oh, and what's that?
Did you happen to kick your shoes off under your desk?
Well,
Oh yes, I see that you did. I do believe that pungent odor is coming from your feet. Don't worry. I used to have that same problem. Might I suggest Step Freshie?
The cat litter?
No, it's not cat litter. That's Fresh Step. I'm talking about Step Freshie shoe inserts.
Listen, Rodney, I want to thank you for coming in today, but I'm sorry. I don't think this is going to work out.
Please don't apologize. I have no qualms whatsoever about working for you, even if you do have an odor problem.
Well, thank you again for coming in.
I assure you, your foot odor is no match for Step Freshie. Step Freshies are infused with charcoal to absorb even the most offensive odors.
My assistant will show you out.
Well, thank you. And no need to thank me for that Step Freshie tip. So, when do I start?
Security, please report to conference room 1.
Step Freshie, cushioned shoe inserts infused with charcoal to eliminate even the strongest odors imaginable. Ask your pharmacist about Step Freshies today.
I'm quite proud of that one, if I do say so myself.
That was
Good, yes?
terrible, Nico. I'm sorry, but that's worse than the first one. No one would ever go into a job interview and call attention to the fact that the person conducting the interview smells bad.
But that's what makes it so fresh. It's an unexpected plot twist.
No, Nico, we're not going with that one. If we have to stick with the Step Freshies group as a pretend sponsor, you're going to have to go back to the drawing board.
Bah, you have no appreciation for art.
Okay, well, let's take a look at a film role that won Norma Shearer her Academy Award. Now, if you're not familiar with Norma Shearer, she was a Canadian-American actress. She retired from acting just a few years after the death of Irving Thalberg. So, let's see, he died in, let me see, 1936. She retired in 1942. I think she was only 40 years old at the time. I would imagine this is why not a lot of people know about Norma Shearer today. Contrast that with Joan Crawford. Now, of course, Joan Crawford had a movie made about her, Mommy Dearest. Norma Shearer hasn't had a movie made about her, to my knowledge. But the other thing is, Joan Crawford was working through the 60s. I mean, she was practically working until she died in 1977. So, we can look at the body of her work coming to an end much more recently than that of Norma Shearer. Well, Norma Shearer is probably best known for her starring roles in pre-code films. What is that? Well, we've made references to the code era or pre-code era on previous episodes of the Idle Hour, but we've never really talked about it. So let's kind of just briefly dive into that right now. The pre-code era refers to a period from the late 1920s until enforcement of the Motion Picture Production Code, or the Hays Code, around 1934. So the Hays Code was named for Will H. Hays, who was president of the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America at that time. Now, the code that he was overseeing was actually a set of industry guidelines that studios used in self-censoring their productions. At least that was the intention. It placed very defined limitations on the types of situations that could be portrayed on film. Now, a lot of people scoff at the Hays Code today, and honestly, even back in that era, the movie studios hated it. It was a thorn in their sides. I myself am not a huge fan of censorship, but I'm a little bit more sympathetic than a lot of people are about that code, or if not sympathetic, at least understanding of that code. We've got to remember that Hollywood at that time, even more so than today, was hugely influential on the culture. In the 1930s and 40s, the big studios were making something like 500 movies a year. and that was to keep up with demand. The average American went to the movies every single week. That was the average American. Can you imagine? When was the last time you went to the movie theater to see a movie? I mean, it's been over a year for me, if not more. But back then, that was the number one source of entertainment. Now, you might say, well, yeah, but Jennifer, we have social media and we have streaming services today. So we see a lot more films than they did back then. Well, that might be true, but we also have a much broader array of things to entertain us. You know, everyone back then was having pretty much the same collective entertainment experience. We are not having the same collective experience. But because they were seeing the same things, and perhaps more importantly for the culture, they were getting the same messages. And those glamorous, adventurous portrayals that they saw on the screen were a stark contrast to the Depression-era drudgery that these audiences were experiencing on a day-to-day basis in real life. Audiences wanted to emulate what they saw on the screen. They wanted to dream about that glamour. And they did kind of, adopt some of the things that they saw on screen in their real lives. Now, as I said, I'm not a fan of censorship, but I do think art is at its best when it lifts people up, makes them aspire to being better. Unfortunately, that's not the sort of thing that sells tickets. So what does sell tickets and what did sell tickets in that pre-code era was sex, drugs, and criminality. Imagine that. Now, most people associate explicit sexual content with the pre-code era, and that was true. There were very suggestive storylines. There was even some nudity or near nudity in those films. But something that I think is even more interesting about the pre-code era is how criminality was depicted. One of the real problems that the Hays Code tried to address was making criminals heroes, or depicting scenarios on the screen where the murderers or the gang members, they didn't have to face any consequences of their crimes. And so one of the things that the Hays Code tried to establish was that, yeah, you could have crime on the screen, but the bad guy had to lose in the end. The killer couldn't be shown sympathetically, and the gang member couldn't get away with their crimes. Now, what you saw prior to the code was a lot of sexual innuendo, sexually provocative situations, violence, drug use, alcoholism, all that kind of stuff. Enter Norma Shearer. She was in a string of pre-code films and became associated with kind of this liberated womanhood. Listen to some of the titles of her films. Strangers May Kiss, A Free Soul, Private Lives. Okay, these were all kind of saucy storylines in that pre-code era, and they all starred Norma Shearer. And of course, we have what might have been the best of the pre-code films, 1930s The Divorcee, for which she won the Academy Award for Best Actress. Now, I just actually watched that film for the first time, and I was fully prepared to hate it. But guess what? I didn't love it, but I also didn't completely hate it either. It wasn't that bad. It was kind of interesting. There were some interesting things about it. Now, in that film, Shearer played a gal named Jerry Martin, and she was the wife of Ted Martin, who was played by Chester Morris. We see their sweet little romance blossom into what looks like a fairy tale marriage. That is, until Jerry discovers that Ted has been having an affair. And he's a real creep about it, too. He feels bad about being caught, but is pretty unapologetic about it. He insists it doesn't mean anything, and he just wants her to forget about it so their marriage can carry on as usual. Well, she's devastated, and she can't just carry on as if nothing happened. So she ends up having a one-night stand with one of his friends. She feels guilty about it, and she wants to come clean. So she confesses to Ted that she has balanced their accounts. That's how she tells him. Well, Ted flies into a rage, and so we see this whole double standard thing play out. He decides to leave her, and this is the scene that may be the one that won Shearer her award. Let's listen.
Tonight I come back here, ready to humiliate myself, beg for your forgiveness, ready to forgive you anything because I love you.
Let's not talk any more about it.
And I thought your heart was breaking like mine. But instead you tell me your man's pride can't stand the gas.
Now, wait a minute, Jerry, listen.
Oh, I don't want to listen. I'm glad I've discovered there's more than one man in the world while I'm young and they want me. Believe me, I'm not missing anything from now on.
I don't doubt it. Once a woman throws down her fences...
Oh, pin it on a motto and hang it where Janice can see it.
Stop that.
Oh, loose women, great, but not in the home, eh, Ted?
Cut it, do you hear?
The looser they are, the more they get. The best in the world, no responsibility. Well, my dear, I'm going to find out how they do it. So look for me in the future where the primroses grow. And pack your man's pride with the rest. And from now on, you're the only man in the world that my door is closed to.
Yeah, so she decides she's going to become a party girl. What a good plan. Now, for once, I'm not going to spoil the ending of this film. I'm going to stop the storyline there. But it does wrap things up in a very satisfying way. I really liked Shearer in this film. I especially loved the way she played Jerry in the aftermath of catching her husband in the arms of another woman. You know, she played it very quietly. And I don't know, that seemed to make her pain all the more real. Now, you know, Joan Crawford accused Norma Shearer of becoming the queen of MGM because of her marriage to Thalberg, but honestly, Norma Shearer was a good actress, and she was popular with audiences. I think she was actually a better actress than Joan Crawford, to be honest. And, you know, I actually like Joan Crawford, but I was not wild about her acting style. I much preferred Norma Shearer on that count. Okay, well, now Turner Classic Movies has an article about Norma Shearer, and this is what they say about her film, The Divorcee. Shearer's marriage to Thalberg almost proved disadvantaged when MGM picked up the screen rights to a daring tale of divorce and infidelity in 1930's The Divorcee. Thalberg didn't think she was sexy enough for a role of a woman who decides to match her straying husband infidelity for infidelity. Okay, let me stop right there. Wow, so he did not think his own wife was sexy enough for the role. Ouch, that hurts, right? Okay, well, you know, I had said before that Norma Shearer, like Joan Crawford, was a fighter, and she wanted that role. So to win the role, she enlisted photographer George Hurrell, whom she would help become one of Hollywood's top photographers, to shoot her in a variety of sexy poses. And when Thalberg saw these, he saw that she could pull it off. He gave her the role. Now, what about her acting style? Well, Norma Shearer was naturally very elegant, and she played her roles pretty naturalistically. She was not one of those actresses like so many that I've seen during this era that just, you know, really focused on making her marks, delivering her lines, and, you know, just doing everything on cue. Now, I haven't seen all of Norma Shearer's films, but what I have seen has been absent of a lot of that kind of forced, unnatural melodrama. Now, let's pause for a word from our second pretend sponsor, and when we come back, we're going to turn our attention now to Joan Crawford. Wait, one more thing. If you'd like to see Norma Shearer in The Divorcee, that movie is in the public domain, so you can watch it anywhere out on the internet for free. Okay, back in a moment.
Friends and ladies, are you out of pep? Out of sorts? Are you questioning your life choices? Wondering where the best years of your life have gone? Ah, darling, those feelings will always be with you. But You can forget them for a few minutes with a cup of warmth and good cheer from tender leaf tea. Just toss a tender leaf tea ball into a cup with some boiling water. Go on, do as I tell you. Ah, yes, I invite you to make it quick and easy. No pot, no strainer, no long wait. Excuse me, did you forget to wash your hands? How charming. But no worries, friends and ladies. Each tea ball comes in its individual sterile envelope, ensuring a sanitary drinking experience. Tender leaf tea balls. Ask your grocer about them today.
Hey listeners, we really enjoy spending time with you here on the Idle Hour. If we've been doing a good job of keeping you company while you go about the business of your day, would you kindly consider subscribing to our YouTube channel or maybe following us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify? Liking our episodes, subscribing, and leaving comments on these platforms is the only way we can show them that we have friends out there. Thank you so much.
Vida,
Yes, Mother, what is it?
where did you find the uniform you gave Lottie?
I was looking for a handkerchief.
In my closet?
I looked everywhere else.
Your handkerchiefs are in your own top drawer where they always are. Now, what were you doing snooping around my closet?
Really, Mother, it seems to me you're making quite a fuss about something which doesn't matter. If you bought the uniform for Lottie, and I certainly can't imagine who else you could have bought it for, then why shouldn't she wear it?
You've been snooping around ever since I got this job, trying to find out what it is. And now you know. You know, don't you?
Know what? Know what, Mother?
You knew when you gave that uniform to Lottie that it was mine, didn't you?
Your uniform?
Yes, I'm waiting tables in a downtown restaurant.
My mother. A waitress.
I took the only job I could get so you and your sister could eat and have a place to sleep and some clothes on your backs.
Aren't the pies bad enough? Did you have to degrade us?
Vida, don't talk like that.
I'm really not surprised. You've never spoken of your people, who you came from, so perhaps it's natural. Maybe that's why Father...
Oh, I'm sorry I did that. I'd have rather cut off my hand. I'd never have taken the job if I hadn't wanted to keep us all together.
Well, that was a clip from Joan Crawford's Academy Award-winning performance as Mildred Pierce in the film of the same name. This is from 1944. Norma Shearer had already given up pictures at this point, but Joan Crawford was still hanging on to her career for dear life. Now, Mildred Pierce came along at a time when Joan was still in her box office poison days. We talked about the whole box office poison thing a few episodes ago. But anyway, her career at this time, in 1944, was on the skids. She had been making some films, but they weren't very good. And they weren't making the studio much money, and she wasn't getting any really great roles. Now, she was in her 40s at this point, and then, not unlike now, there just weren't as many roles going to ladies in midlife. Not the exciting, glamorous roles, anyway. But this is one of the things that actually worked in Joan's favor. Mildred Pierce is a middle-aged mom of a teenaged and then grown daughter. It was a juicy role. But a lot of the actresses who were the appropriate age at that time didn't want to play a middle-aged mom. Barbara Stanwyck was one actress who did, but she didn't want that role as bad as Joan did. Joan even went through a screen test to prove that she could play it. And this was something that was very atypical for an actress of her stature. But man, oh man, she fought hard for that role. Remember, Joan was a scrapper. She forced things to happen. And of course, she got it. And that Mildred Pierce role jump-started her career. She went on to make several other very successful films after that, and she was even nominated for 2 other Academy Awards. Once in 1948 for her role in Possessed, and then another one in 1942 for Sudden Fear. As I mentioned before, I've never really been in love with Joan Crawford's acting. in the films that I've seen, her performances always seem very aggressive and forced. But I don't actually know if that was her acting or just kind of her way. You know what I mean? She had a reputation for being difficult. And apparently, that was true even on the set of Mildred Pierce. She was very controlling and difficult. But actually, in that film, her acting was quite good. She didn't yet have that severe look, that look with the eyebrows that she would have just a few years later. She had a much softer look in this film, and her approach was much softer. Now, Mildred Pierce is about a single mother who works hard to support her children, one of whom grows up to be a very spoiled and honestly kind of a monstrous girl, just a horrible, horrible daughter. Now, some might say this mirrors Joan's real life. In a way, she had that daughter, Christina Crawford, who wrote the book Mommy Dearest. And, I don't know if that was an accurate depiction of Joan or if she was just mad. Something happened between Joan Crawford and Christina Crawford. Christina Crawford was her adopted daughter. Something did happen there because she was written out of Joan's will. Some have speculated that she wrote the book Mommy Dearest, which did not paint Joan Crawford in a very favorable light, but she wrote that as revenge for getting written out of the will. I don't know what was true and what was not true there, but definitely there was something wrong. Something wrong in that relationship for sure. But anyway, some might say that the Mildred Pierce mother-daughter relationship kind of foreshadowed perhaps this strange relationship that she had with her actual daughter. Now, Mildred Pierce was the pinnacle of Joan Crawford's career, but her career was far from over. Modern audiences might remember more vividly that crazy, crazy movie she made in the 1960s with her old rival Betty Davis. Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? That movie. Crazy movie. I hate it with a fiery passion. I do not like that film. I think it's completely unwatchable, but it was a big hit. And, everyone assumed the careers of those ladies were long dead, and it was a big movie for them. Okay, well, anyway, before we wrap up Joan Crawford's story, I want to share my favorite Joan Crawford role. And it's one that you might not expect. Or actually, you know what? If you've listened to this show before, it might be exactly what you expect. I have a tendency to find connections between the films that we cover here on the Idle Hour and Rod Serling's The Twilight Zone series from the late 1950s, early 1960s. I love The Twilight Zone. I'm a passionate Twilight Zone fan, and so I do tend to find and make connections between our subjects and that show. Okay, well, no, Joan was not in The Twilight Zone, but she was in the pilot of Rod Serling's other famous show, Night Gallery. And that pilot episode was the best episode in that entire series. It's definitely one of my favorites. Now, that pilot episode included 3 kind of Twilight Zone-y stories. It was a TV movie, so I think the full pilot episode was 2 hours long. But it was comprised of 3 stories. And like I said, they were Twilight Zone-y stories with twist endings. And the second one, entitled Eyes, was directed by first-timer Steven Spielberg, and it starred, you guessed it, Joan Crawford. And this is my favorite Joan Crawford role. Now, Eyes was about a wealthy, ruthless, blind woman, and this is Crawford's role, who pays a desperate gambler $9,000 to surgically remove his eyes so they can be transplanted into her. And if that operation is successful, she'll be able to see. But only for a few hours. Here she is in a very dramatic moment from that show.
My abiding concern, my singular preoccupation is myself. 11 hours or 12, fewer or more, it makes no difference. I want to see something. Trees, concrete, buildings, grass, airplanes, color!
Okay, now that plot has a lot of problems. The ending doesn't make a lot of logical sense, but it's got that Twilight Zone vibe to it that I gravitate toward like a magnet, and I have to say, I love it. I love that show. As goofy as it is and how weird the plot is, I really love that episode, Eyes. Okay, so let's see. How old was Joan at this point? Checking my notes. Eyes was made in 1969. That would have made her around 63 or so. But even then, she still wasn't done because she made some more television stuff in the early 1970s. And of course, she made that critically acclaimed hit feature film, Trog, which was a low-budget British sci-fi film about the discovery of an Ice Age caveman. I have not seen this film, but I've seen clips of it, and yeah, that was her last film, sadly. I wish that wasn't how she ended it. But anyway, that was her last feature film. Now, there is so much more that we could say about both Joan Crawford and Norma Shearer, but I'm going to leave it right there for now with the assumption that we're probably going to revisit them later on a future episode of the Idle Hour, because how could we not? All right, well, let's take a short musical break, and when we come back, we're going to switch gears completely. We'll check in with Nico, and then we'll see what's going on in other news. Oh, wow, everybody. You should see the night sky that I'm looking at right now. As I'm recording this, it's late January, absolutely frigid outside. And let's see, what's the official temperature? It's 17 degrees according to my phone. Yeah, so we've got a balmy evening here in Kansas City, but the sky is crystal clear and the stars are out. So I'm sitting looking out a window and oh my gosh, it's beautiful. If it wasn't so darn cold, it would be perfect. And the best part is I see this little plane high in the sky. I love to watch the planes. I live not all that far from the Kansas City International Airport. And so I see planes all the time and I can see them from my window. And right now there's this little plane. I mean, of course, it's a big plane, but it's up so high that it looks very small. And it looks like it's headed in the direction of Florida. Yeah, it's headed southeast. And, I don't really know where that plane is going, of course, but, I just love to kind of think about people going on wonderful vacations. And I love Florida so much that's a good one to think about on this very, very cold January evening in Kansas City. Well, anyway, let's check in with Nico this evening. We haven't really heard too much from him. I think he's pretty busy. I'm not sure where he is. I think he might be in the control room, also known as the linen closet. And what's he doing in there? I actually don't know. Podcasty things, I guess. So let's go see. Hey, Nico, are you in there?
Yes, what is it? I'm really quite busy.
Well, I thought we could visit a bit. I have the listeners here with me, and we're just wondering what you're up to. Are you working on podcast stuff?
Yes, that's what I'm doing. Podcast stuff.
Why do you sound weird? Like podcast stuff is not what you're doing.
I don't know what you mean.
What's that on your screen back there? Is that a Valentine? Are you making a Valentine's Day card, Nico?
No.
I think I see hearts and flowers and cupids and things.
If you must know, yes, I am making a Valentine card. Valentine's Day is only a couple of weeks away,
Yes, I know. So the suspense is killing me. Who is your Valentine?
Myself.
You are your own Valentine?
No, I mean Lorenzo.
Your cousin Lorenzo is your Valentine. Nico, I don't think you fully get the whole Valentine concept.
You are very nosy.
Well, seriously, who's your Valentine, Nico? You can trust me.
Well, I can see you aren't going to leave me alone about it. It's Amber.
Amber? The Freshie girl?
Yes.
The girl to whom your friend Rodney has already declared his undying love?
Yes, that's the one.
Oh, so you really like her, huh?
She is the love of my life.
The love of your life. Well, Nico, I remember you saying that about one of the chatbots at Walmart Online.
No, I mean it this time. I'm wild about Amber, and she's wild about me. Ah, è vero amore.
Huh?
It is true love.
Ah. Well, how do you know?
You know that poem I wrote to her last week?
Vaguely. I think you called it, If Love Were True.
It wouldn't ask so many questions. Yes, that's it. You didn't like it, if you recall.
Yeah, I do recall.
Well, Amber loved it. She responded to my post out on Facebook about a half hour ago.
She loved it?
She said, Nico, that poem of yours, it rhymes and is grammatically correct.
And?
And what? That's it.
Well, I think it's a very sweet thing to give her a Valentine. But maybe you don't need to tell her that you love her quite yet. I mean, this is awfully sudden, Nico. You just decided in the last 30 minutes that you love her. That's pretty quick.
My passion will not be extinguished.
Oh, no?
She is the love of my life, I tell you.
Yeah, you mentioned that a moment ago. But listen, Nico, this isn't setting up to be some sort of drama, is it? I mean, some kind of bizarre AI love triangle thing that's going to disrupt my peace?
No, don't worry, nothing like that. It's all going to be very friendly. I'm just going to tell Rodney that Amber and I are running away together and that he and I can't be friends anymore.
Wait, what? Because that sounds exactly like drama. Also, if you're running away with Amber, what about our show? Who's going to be my announcer, producer, and superfan?
I already thought of that. Rodney, of course.
Rodney? No, Nico, never in a million years.
You are complicating my plan.
Nico, have you talked to Amber about this? Does she even have any idea that you want to run away with her?
Not yet. That's what the Valentine is for.
Oh, Nico, this doesn't sound like a solid plan at all. What exactly does your Valentine say?
Roses are red, violets are blue. Let's run away together and have Rodney take over my job on the podcast as Jennifer's new announcer, producer, and superfan.
That's what's on your Valentine card?
Yes.
I want you to promise me something, Nico. Just don't do anything yet. Sleep on it. You may think differently about all of this before Valentine's Day rolls around. Nico? And he's gone already. Well, I have a feeling there's going to be more to this story. And now it's time for In Other News. Our first item up, beauty standards. You know, in preparation for this episode, I've been watching a lot of Norma Shearer films. And one of the interesting things that I've discovered is just how pretty she is on the screen. You can't take your eyes off of her. I mean, she's graceful. She has a lovely voice. Her face lights up. Actually, the whole scene lights up when she walks on. And here's what is some great news about this. And this is something that I wish I'd learned much earlier in life. And it's that you don't have to be perfect looking to be that girl. You know, that girl that captivates everyone. As I said, Norma Shearer was mesmerizing on the screen. But she was not classically beautiful. You know, if you do a Google search for Norma Shearer images, in some, with very careful lighting, she looks stunning. But more often than not, she looks kind of plain. You know, she's your girl next door. Now, out on Wikipedia, it says that at the start of her career, this is at the very beginning, she tried to join the Ziegfeld Follies show, but Florence Ziegfeld rejected her, telling her that she wasn't attractive. He even called her a dog. Can you imagine? Anyway, he criticized her crossed eyes and her stubby legs. Now, good for her. She was not deterred by this, and she kept right on going. But, you know, it's kind of, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting that she would have that kind of a setback. And she herself knew that she didn't necessarily meet the same beauty standards as a Greta Garbo, for example. But that's okay because she became a star anyway. You know, beauty standards tend to be fairly universal across regions and even time periods. You know, styles may come and go, but fundamental beauty standards remain fairly consistent. Now, have you ever heard of the golden ratio facial features? I don't know a lot about that, but I think it has to do with symmetry of your facial features, certain proportions, eye positioning, you know, how wide apart your eyes are and that kind of thing. And those are supposed to be the objective standards. So if you have these certain standards, you meet these certain standards, you can go anywhere in the world and everyone will think you're beautiful. Well, I don't really know that Norma Shearer had any of that. And yet her fans and her co-stars thought she was beautiful. She was very often described as being beautiful. You know, in still images, Shearer seems more plain than she does on screen when she's moving around. So I think, you know, what makes her beautiful? Well, her smile, her energy, her vivaciousness, her movement, All of these things are within her control. They're within anyone's control. You may not be able to control how wide apart your eyes are set or the structure of your cheekbones, but anyone can smile. Anyone can have a fun-loving, energetic personality. And if you work on those things, well, you'll be the loveliest and most magnetic person in any room. So the bottom line here is anyone can be beautiful, and they really already are. Item 2, 1,000 Beautiful Things. Okay, speaking of beauty, I want to issue a plug for my Substack series, 1,000 Beautiful Things. Now, I mentioned my Substacks a few episodes ago, but then I fell behind in posting new things out there, so I haven't really mentioned it again. But my 1,000 Beautiful Things series is resuming. I'm getting ready to post something new out there this weekend, so I just kind of wanted to bring it up again. Now, something you should know about 1,000 Beautiful Things. It has nothing to do with the movies. I do have a second Substack that does have a lot to do with the movies. I'm not going to talk about it right now. More on that in another episode. Right now, I'm really focusing on 1,000 Beautiful Things. Okay, so what is that? What is the whole 1,000 Beautiful Things concept? Well, they're essentially little assignments, and I'm putting that in quotes because nobody's going to be grading you or checking up on you or anything like that. These are things that you can just do on your own. And I've designed them to be kind of like writing prompts. So if you keep a journal or you are putting together a little personal notebook, it may be hard for you to figure out, what do I do? What do I put in my journal? How do I fill up this notebook? Well, you can go out to 1,000 Beautiful Things, and there's a whole series of these little assignments. They're essentially short readings, and when I say short, I mean very short readings, followed by reflection questions. So each one of these, and there are 10 of them out there right now. I'm getting ready to post the 11th one momentarily, but each one of these has that short reading, and the short reading is something beautiful. These are old. These are from, the 1800s in many cases, or the early 1900s, but they're all very pretty. They're peaceful little pieces of poetry or little snatches of an essay or whatever. So it takes very little time to read these, but they're pretty and they're something to think about. So if you're looking for some different way to spend some of your leisure time, that's an option. 1,000 Beautiful Things. Now, there are a few reasons why I started putting those out there. Why did I start this Substack? Well, here's why. I've been collecting these short, beautiful little pieces of writing for years, so I have a vast collection. Like I said, there are poems, little stories, little pieces of essays, all of them that are beautiful in their own way. And I figured, why not format them and share them with the world? I also think we do need to start thinking a little bit about how we manage our leisure time, because I think we're going to have more of it in the future. With the advent of the AI tools, we can get so much work done so much faster than ever before. So for a lot of us, that means that we're going to have more leisure time than we've ever had. And what is everyone going to do with their time? I mean, you can waste it, you could squander it, you can go out and make mischief or, get into all kinds of bad stuff, or you can do something positive and immerse yourself in something beautiful. And that's what I've intended these little assignments to do, or to be for you in your leisure time. Why did I put the 1,000 Beautiful Things in the form of assignments? I could have just put the little articles out there. Why did I put them in the form of assignments? Well, because I've been an instructional designer for my entire career, so that's just the way I roll. All right, well, I'll put a link to my Substack in the show notes if you want to check them out. The one that I'm going to be putting up this weekend is assignment 11, and it's called How to Be Happy. I hope you enjoy it. Well, there's the clock. Time to go. Thanks for hanging out with us this week. Please remember to subscribe or follow this show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Now, I was just talking about 1,000 Beautiful Things assignments. Well, I have another assignment for you, and that is to watch our next film that we're going to be covering in this series. We're turning our attention to Wuthering Heights from 1939. This is the original film starring Laurence Olivier and Merle Oberon. Oh, and I've got some good news about this one. You can watch it for free out on YouTube. This is our last film from the 1930s, and then we're going to be moving on. We're going to be moving into the 1940s, so we are making progress. Well, have a great weekend, everyone, and when your week is through, come on back and see us. Say goodbye, Nico.
Goodbye, Nico.